You have looked at your lawn and made the call. It is more weeds than grass at this point, and you are going to reseed it. You have got the bag in the garage, or it is in your cart right now. Put it down for 10 minutes, because there is a very good chance that if you spread that seed this weekend, in 3 weeks, you will have exactly the same lawn you have today, minus the $60 you just spent. And it will not be because you bought cheap seed. It will not be because you did not water enough. It will not be because your soil is somehow cursed. It will be because of two specific things almost nobody tells you. One that costs you nothing to check, and one that costs about $2 to fix, and that virtually every homeowner skips without knowing it exists. Let me start with the one that stops people dead, because if this applies to you, nothing else in this video matters until you deal with it. Pre-emergent herbicide, the active ingredient in crabgrass preventer, and in most bags labeled weed and feed, works by killing seeds as they germinate. It creates a barrier in the soil that attacks the very first root and shoot a seed puts out before anything ever breaks the surface. And it cannot tell the difference between a weed seed and a grass seed. It kills both, and that barrier stays active in your soil for roughly 12 weeks. So picture the sequence that plays out in millions of yards every year. In spring, you do the responsible thing and put down crabgrass preventer. 2 months later, you look at the lawn, decide it needs thickening, and spread grass seed over it. Nothing comes up, not a blade. And you conclude the seed was junk, or that your lawn is beyond saving, and you start pricing out sod. But the seed was fine. It germinated. It put out its first root. That root hit the chemical barrier you laid down 8 weeks earlier, and it died underground. You paid for weed prevention, and it worked exactly as advertised. It just also worked on the thing you actually wanted to grow. So, in this video, I am going to walk you through reseeding a weedy lawn properly, start to finish. The 4 mistakes that make it fail, including that $2 step, which weeds you have to deal with before you seed, and which ones you can seed straight over. How to pick the right seed, when to put it down, and the exact order of operations at the end so you can just follow it. Before we start, do me a favor. Tell me in the comments roughly what percentage of your lawn is weeds right now. 20%? Half? 80%? And tell me if you have reseeded before and it did not take. I ask because I suspect a lot of you got hit by that pre-emergent trap and never knew it. And I would like to see how common it really is. I read every comment. All right, let us start with the thing that reframes this whole problem. Weeds are not the disease. Weeds are the symptom. Think about how a weed actually gets into a lawn. A seed lands on the ground. For it to grow, it needs light-hitting bare soil. In a thick, healthy stand of grass, that seed lands on a dense mat of blades, never reaches the soil, never gets light, and never germinates. It sits there and dies. Weeds do not invade healthy turf. They colonize gaps. So, when you look at a lawn that is mostly weeds, what you are really looking at is a lawn where the grass thinned out first and the weeds moved into the empty space afterward. The weeds did not beat your grass in a fight. They moved into a house your grass had already left. This matters for what you do next, because it means killing the weeds by itself accomplishes almost nothing. Spray everything dead, and do not fix the thinness, and you have got bare soil, which is the single most weed-friendly surface on Earth. 1 season later, you are back where you started, except now you have also paid for herbicide. The real fix is getting grass thick enough to close those gaps. So, yes, seed is the answer, but only in the right order, and that is where it falls apart for most people. Let us go through the 4 mistakes. Mistake number 1 is the pre-emergent problem I opened with, and it is the biggest by a wide margin. Let me be specific about the products, because this is where people get caught without realizing it. Anything sold as a crabgrass preventer is a pre-emergent. Most bags labeled weed and feed contain one. Anything promising to stop weeds before they start is by definition working at the seed level, and plenty of people have used weed and feed for years without ever knowing there is a pre-emergent in it. The barrier stays viable in the soil for roughly 12 weeks after you apply it. So, Rule 1, before anything else, figure out what has gone on to that lawn in the last 3 months. Go look in the garage, read the bag. If there is a pre-emergent in there, your seeding date is set by that 12-week clock, not by your calendar or your enthusiasm. Mistake number 2 is the post-emergent timing problem. Same idea, different numbers. Post-emergent herbicide is what you spray on weeds that are already growing. The selective broadleaf killers that take out dandelions and clover without hurting your grass. These are genuinely useful, and they are often the correct first step on a weedy lawn. But they linger too. As a general rule, allow somewhere in the range of 4 to 6 weeks between applying a post-emergent and putting seed down. With common broadleaf products, you will often see a recommendation of at least 3 to 4 weeks. Some newer formulations are designed to break down quickly and allow earlier seeding, but you have to read that specific label rather than assume. And here is the squeeze this creates, which is the part people do not plan for. The best window for overseeding most lawns is late summer into early fall. If you spray too late in the season, by the time the waiting period is over, you have missed the seeding window entirely, and you are sitting out a whole year. So, the sequencing is not a detail. It is the entire game. Mistake number 3 is the $2 step in the title, and I would bet most of you have never heard it. When people reseed bare or thin spots, the standard move is to spread a thin layer of topsoil over the seed. It keeps the seed in contact with the ground, holds moisture, stops birds taking it. Completely sensible. Bag of topsoil from the garden center. Spread it. Done. And that bag of topsoil is full of weed seed. Read that again because it explains an enormous amount of frustration. You fought weeds all spring. You finally reseeded. And 6 weeks later, that patch is full of new weeds, including some you have never seen in your yard before. You did not fail. You planted them. They came in the top dressing. The fix is simple and cheap. Skip the topsoil, use a sterilized top dressing instead. Sterilized peat moss or coconut coir, the same starter material used for seed starting indoors. It has been treated, so it carries no viable weed seed. That way, you are planting grass, and only grass. A small bag runs a couple of dollars and covers plenty of area for spot work. And it is the difference between reseeding that thickens your lawn and reseeding that quietly seeds a fresh generation of weeds into the exact spots you just cleared. That one step is why I titled this video the way I did. It is not glamorous, it costs almost nothing, and skipping it undoes everything else you did right. Now, quick aside before we keep going, because a lot of what I am about to cover depends on knowing exactly what you are dealing with. Everything on this channel is the what, but there is a layer underneath that never fits in a video. Which specific weed you are actually looking at and what kills that particular one. What the timing looks like where you live, and how the dosages change for your grass type. That is what I put together in the Backyard Verdict System. It is a 90-minute audio guide in 6 chapters, plus a printable PDF you can tape to the garage wall. There is a weed identification chapter covering 15 specific weeds, dandelions all the way to torpedo grass, and exactly which treatment kills each one, including the ones nothing in the system will touch. There is a complete shopping guide with brand names and the look-alike products that will wreck your lawn. There is a regional chapter because timing in the Southeast is nothing like timing in Canada. There is a grass-type chapter with modified dosages, which matters a lot for anyone with St. Augustine or centipede. And there is a month-by-month calendar, so you know what to apply and when instead of reacting after the damage is done. It is at backyardverdict.com, and the link is in the description. There is a free sample chapter, and you can flip through the actual PDF pages before deciding. Plus, a 7-day refund guarantee. The whole system runs on 6 cheap products from the grocery store and pharmacy, and it costs less than a single bag of the fertilizer it replaces. All right, back to it. Mistake number 4. Mistake number 4 is skipping the ground prep, and it quietly ruins more reseeding jobs than bad seed ever has. Grass seed needs direct contact with soil to germinate. It cannot sprout sitting on top of a thatch layer or on hard compacted ground. It has to work its way down and make contact with actual dirt. And overseeding without loosening the soil first dramatically reduces germination rates. Not slightly, dramatically. So, if your soil is compacted, and most lawns that have gone weedy are, aerating first is not an optional upgrade. It is the difference between most of your seed taking and most of it feeding the birds. The test costs nothing. Push a long screwdriver into the soil. In decent ground, it slides in several inches without much effort. If it stops dead after an inch or two, you are compacted, and seed spread on that surface is largely wasted. If you are compacted, core aeration is the answer. The kind that pulls plugs out, not the spiky shoes that just push the compaction sideways. And here is a bonus. Aerating right before overseeding creates thousands of little holes that are perfect seed pockets. The seed falls in, it is protected, it is in contact with soil, and it is shaded from drying out. Aerating and overseeding on the same day is one of the highest return combinations in lawn care. Now, there is one exception to the whole pre-emergent rule, and it is worth knowing because it solves the timing squeeze completely. There is a pre-emergent that works alongside grass seed. The active ingredient is mesotrione, sold under brand names including Tenacity. It is selective in a very useful way. It prevents crabgrass and clover from coming up while still allowing grass seed to germinate. It will even take out some weeds that do manage to sprout. You apply it at the time of overseeding or before the new seed germinates. And one important caveat, while it works well with cool season grasses like fescue, Kentucky bluegrass, and perennial ryegrass, it can damage some warm season grasses. So, if you are in the South with St. Augustine or something similar, check carefully before you reach for it. But, for a lot of people, that is the tool that lets you do weed prevention and seeding in the same season, instead of picking one. Now, let us talk about which weeds force you to wait, because I do not want to send you out overseeding into a situation where it physically cannot work. There are 3 cases where you hold off on seeding and deal with the weeds first. The first is heavy creeping weeds, ground ivy, which many people call creeping Charlie, along with nutsedge and bindweed. These do not just compete with new seedlings, they physically smother them. They form a mat that grows right over the top of anything trying to come up. Seeding into that is throwing money on the ground. The second is a thick mat of crabgrass. And here is something interesting about crabgrass. It is an annual, so it dies on its own when cold weather arrives. That sounds like good news, and partly it is. But if it has grown into a heavy mat, that dead thatch physically blocks seed from reaching soil. So the mat has to come out, raking, dethatching, or scalping that area low. The third is a serious broadleaf infestation. If more than about half your lawn is dandelions, plantain, or clover, it is worth treating them first and planning to seed a few weeks later rather than trying to thread the needle. Outside those 3 cases, You can often just overseed and let the new grass do the work, especially going into fall because annual weeds die off over winter anyway. And your new grass gets a head start in spring while the weeds have to restart from seed. Now, let us talk about the seed itself because this is where people also lose money. Not all grass seed is the same, and the cheapest bag on the shelf is usually cheap for a reason. Two things to look at. First, match the seed to your climate. Cool season grasses, fescues, Kentucky bluegrass, perennial ryegrass do well in northern climates and grow most actively in spring and fall. Warm season grasses like Bermuda, zoysia, and St. Augustine are for the south and grow hardest in summer heat. Putting the wrong category down means fighting your climate every season, and you will lose that fight. Second, and this one is easy to check, read the label for weed seed content and for filler. Cheap seed blends frequently contain a percentage of other crop seed and weed seed, and some of them are loaded with annual ryegrass, which comes up beautifully fast and then dies, which is why the lawn looks great for 6 weeks and then goes thin again. A good bag will list its contents clearly, and the weed seed percentage will be very low. And match the seed to the grass you already have, if you can. Overseeding fescue into a bluegrass lawn will grow, but it will always look like 2 different lawns because the blade texture and the color are different. And one last thing on seed that saves people real money. Check the date on the bag. Grass seed loses viability as it ages, and a bag that has been sitting in a shed through a hot summer and a cold winter can have dramatically lower germination than the label claims. Buy fresh, buy it close to when you are going to use it, and store what is left somewhere cool and dry rather than in a hot garage. Nobody thinks about seed as perishable, but it absolutely is. Now the part that costs nothing at all, and it might be the highest value thing in this entire video. Raise your mower. That is it. That is the tip. And here is why it works so well. Remember the core principle. Weed seeds need light on soil to germinate. Now think about what mowing height actually does. Cut your grass short, and you open the canopy, sunlight reaches the ground between the blades, and you have rolled out a welcome mat for every weed seed in your yard. Cut it taller, and the grass shades its own soil, and those seeds never get the light they need. Taller grass also grows deeper roots, which makes it more drought-tolerant, which keeps it thicker through the summer stress, which closes more gaps. It compounds season after season. Most people mow short because they think it looks tidier and it means mowing less often. And they have been quietly cultivating weeds for years without realizing it. Raising the deck a notch or two is free, takes 10 seconds, and reduces weed pressure every single week for the rest of the season. One more free adjustment while we are here. Don't spray post-emergent on grass that is just coming out of dormancy in spring. Even though selective herbicide is not supposed to harm grass, turf that is still waking up is stressed and handles it badly. Wait until the lawn is uniformly green and actively growing, and you have mowed it a few times. Spray too early, and you stress the grass you are trying to save, which thins it further, which lets in more weeds. 4. Now let us cover watering, because more new seed dies from watering mistakes than from anything else. Germination is completely different from normal lawn watering, and this trips up people who otherwise know what they are doing. Established grass wants deep, infrequent watering. That is what drives roots downward. But a seed has no roots. It is sitting in the top half-inch of soil, and if that half-inch dries out even once after germination has started, seedling dies. There is no recovering it. So while you are waiting for germination, you want the opposite of your normal routine. Light and frequent. Enough to keep the surface consistently damp several times a day in hot weather, never soaking. You are not trying to water the soil profile, you are trying to keep the top layer from drying. Then, Once the new grass is up and has been mowed a couple of times, you transition to deep and infrequent, and you keep it there. That transition is what pushes the roots down and makes the new grass actually durable, instead of a shallow carpet that browns the first hot week. And a related point people miss: keep off the seeded area. New seedlings are fragile, and foot traffic across a germinating patch will kill a surprising amount of it. So let us put it all together into an actual order of operations. Step 1. Take inventory. What has gone on this lawn in the last 12 weeks? Any pre-emergent, including anything labeled weed and feed, sets your seeding date. Go read the bags in the garage. Step 2. Identify what you are fighting. Broadleaf weeds like dandelion and clover, grassy weeds like crabgrass, or creeping weeds like ground ivy and nutsedge. These need different treatments and different timelines, and grassy weeds are considerably harder than broadleaf. Step 3. If you are in one of the 3 hold-off cases, treat now, and mark the calendar 4 to 6 weeks out, checking the label for its specific seeding interval. Step 4. Prep the ground. Core aerate if the screwdriver test says you are compacted. Rake or dethatch to clear dead mat so seed can reach soil. Step 5. Choose seed that matches your climate and your existing grass, and check the label for weed seed and filler. Step 6. Seed in the right window. For most lawns, that is late summer into early fall. Soil still warm enough for germination, brutal heat broken, weed pressure dropping. Step 7. Top dress with sterilized peat moss or coir, not topsoil. This is the $2 step, and it is the one everybody skips. Step 8. Water light and frequent until germination. Then switch to deep and infrequent once it is established. Stay off it. Step 9. Raise your mower and keep it raised. And Step 10. Plan to do it again next fall. A lawn that has gone mostly weeds usually does not come all the way back in one season. 2 rounds of overseeding across 2 falls will transform it. 1 round will improve it. Expecting a total turnaround in 6 weeks is exactly how people give up right before it starts working. So, here is the verdict. You almost certainly do not need to kill your lawn and start from bare dirt. That is expensive. It is brutal work, and it leaves you with the most weed-friendly surface there is. Most lawns that look like a lost cause are recoverable because the grass is not gone. It has just been outnumbered and squeezed out of space. What you need is the right sequence and $2 of the right top dressing instead of the wrong one. Find out what is already in your soil. Deal with the weeds that physically block seedlings. Loosen the ground. Seed in fall. Cover it with something sterile. Water it like a seed, not like a lawn. And raise that mower. Do that 2 years running, and the lawn that made you want to rent a tiller will be the thickest one on your street, and it will stay that way, because thick grass is the only weed control that never wears off, never needs reapplying, and does not cost anything once it is there. Now, I want to hear from you and be specific if you can. What is the dominant weed in your lawn right now? Dandelions, clover, crabgrass, creeping Charlie, or something you cannot put a name to because the answer genuinely changes the plan. And if enough of you name the same one, that is the next video I make. Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. If this guide has changed the way you look at the weeds in your yard, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the secrets to a perfect landscape that others might overlook. Let us grow a better future together. The next lawn treasure will be revealed soon.